The wealth management industry has a number they want burned into your brain. $1.7 million. That's what they'll tell you is the absolute minimum for a comfortable retirement. The more cautious advisors will push it to 2.5 million. And if you talk to the really conservative ones, they'll insist you need north of 4 million before you can even think about leaving the workforce. Here's what nobody's telling you. That number isn't based on what you need to be free. It's based on what they need you to save so they can collect fees for the next 30 years. I'm going to walk you through the actual mathematics of financial independence, and when we're done, you're going to understand why $400,000, not 4 million, not 2 million, 400,000 is enough to make work optional for the rest of your life. And before you dismiss this as fantasy or some kind of extreme frugality manifesto, understand that I'm not talking about living in a van or eating rice and beans for decades. I'm talking about a genuine middle-class lifestyle with better weather, better food, and more freedom than most Americans will ever experience. The difference is one simple variable that the financial services industry desperately hopes you never calculate: location. Let me tell you how retirement planning actually works in this country. You sit down with an advisor. They ask about your current spending. Let's say you tell them you're spending $65,000 a year right now. They plug that into their calculator, add 3% inflation, assume you'll live to 92, and suddenly you're looking at needing $1.8 million minimum. The entire model is built on a single assumption, that your life after work will cost the same as your life during work. Think about that for a second. Really think about it. When you're working, what are you actually spending money on? You're spending $400 a month on a car payment because you need reliable transportation for your commute. You're spending another $250 on gas and insurance. You're dropping $150 on work clothes every few months because you need to look professional. You're spending $60 a week on convenient meals, breakfast on the way in, lunch near the office, dinner because you're too exhausted to cook. You're taking one expensive vacation a year because you only get 2 weeks off and you need to pack all your relaxation into 14 days, so you're paying peak season prices for everything. Add it up, the car, $6,000 annually, work clothes, $800, convenience food, $3,000, premium vacation, $4,000. That's $13,800 you're spending every year just to manage the stress and logistics of employment. Remove the job, and that spending vanishes, not reduces, vanishes. You don't need a car when you live in a walkable city with good public transit. You don't need work clothes when you're not going to an office. You don't need convenience food when you have time to cook. You don't need to compress your travel into expensive 2-week windows when you can travel in shoulder season and stay longer for less money. The retirement planning industry knows this. They absolutely know this. But if they told you the truth, that your post-work spending will be 30 to 40% lower than your working spending, you'd need far less capital. And if you need less capital, you'll save for fewer years. And if you save for fewer years, they collect fewer fees. So instead, they keep you on the treadmill, chasing a number that's artificially inflated by expenses you won't even have. Let me show you what financial independence actually costs when you optimize for freedom instead of convention. $400,000 invested in a diversified portfolio of dividend-paying index funds and bonds. Let's be conservative. We're targeting a 3.5% annual yield. Not aggressive growth, not speculative returns. 3.5%. Through a combination of dividends and modest, sustainable withdrawals. $400,000 at 3.5% generates $14,000 per year. That's $1,167 per month. In the United States, $1,100 a month is barely scraping by. You're looking at a studio apartment in a declining neighborhood, public assistance, constant financial stress. But here's where the mathematics become interesting. Take that same $1,167 to Malaga, Spain. You can rent a 1-bedroom apartment 3 blocks from the Mediterranean for €600. That's about $650. Add another $80 for utilities, including high-speed internet. You're now at $730 monthly, with housing covered. Food. If you shop at local markets and cook most meals at home, you're spending about $250 monthly. That includes fresh seafood, excellent produce, good wine with dinner twice a week. Healthcare. Spain has one of the best healthcare systems in the world. As a resident, you can access private insurance for about $90 monthly that covers everything: doctor visits, prescriptions, emergency care, specialists. Transportation. Malaga has excellent public transit. A monthly pass costs $40. Add another $30 for occasional taxis. That's $70 total. Phone and connectivity. $25 monthly for a local plan with plenty of data. That puts us at $1,175. We're at the ceiling of our budget, but we haven't added discretionary spending yet. So let's be realistic. You'll want entertainment, hobbies, occasional meals out, coffees with friends. Here's where the model flexes, because when you're living in a low-cost location on passive income, generating an extra $200 to $300 monthly through occasional freelance work isn't a job, it's a choice. 3 hours a week of online consulting at $75 an hour. 6 hours a week teaching English online at $25 an hour. 10 hours a week of freelance writing at $50 an hour. None of this is full-time employment. None of it requires you to be anywhere at any specific time. All of it is optional work that you can scale up when you want buffer and scale down when you don't. Add $300 monthly in optional income to your $1,167 from capital, and you're at $1,467 monthly. Now you have genuine comfort. Now you have $300 of discretionary spending every month for whatever matters to you. Maybe Spain doesn't appeal to you. Let's run the numbers in Central America. Antigua, Guatemala. This is a UNESCO World Heritage City. Cobblestone streets, colonial architecture, surrounded by volcanoes, perfect spring weather year-round. 2-bedroom apartment in the historic center, $450 monthly. Yes, 2 bedrooms. Utilities including fast internet, $60. Food shopping at local markets, $200 monthly for excellent fresh food. Private health insurance through a local provider, $70. Transportation, the city is walkable, but add $50 for occasional shuttles to nearby cities. Phone, $15. Total, $845 monthly. That's $10,140 annually. Your $400,000 at 3.5% is generating $14,000 annually. You've got nearly $4,000, $330 monthly in surplus. That's not barely making it, that's living comfortably with substantial buffer. Let's try Eastern Europe. Plovdiv, Bulgaria. It's the oldest continuously inhabited city in Europe. Older than Rome, older than Athens. Gorgeous old town, thriving art scene, excellent food culture, and absurdly low cost of living. 1-bedroom apartment in a renovated historic building, $350 monthly. Utilities, $70. Food, $220 monthly, including regular meals at nice local restaurants. Health insurance, $60 for private coverage. Public transportation pass, $20. Phone, $12. Total, $732 monthly. That's $8,784 annually. You're now living in Europe with over $5,000 annual surplus. That's money for travel around the continent on budget airlines. That's money for hobbies and equipment. That's money for inflation buffer. That's money for unexpected expenses. The mathematical reality is undeniable. $400,000 generates enough passive income to fund a comfortable middle-class lifestyle in dozens of countries around the world, with money left over. Let's contrast this with what the same lifestyle costs in American cities. Denver, Colorado. It's not even one of the most expensive American cities. It's solidly Tier 2. One-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood within 20 minutes of downtown, $1,800 monthly. And that's if you're lucky. Average is closer to $2,000. Utilities, $140. Food, cooking most meals at home, $450. Groceries are expensive and restaurants are $20 to $30 minimum for a basic meal. Health insurance for a 40-year-old through the ACA marketplace, $500 monthly with a $5,000 deductible. Car payment, insurance, gas, and maintenance. You need a car in Denver, $450 monthly. Phone, $65. We're at $3,405 monthly. That's $41,260 annually. To generate $41,000 annually at 3.5% withdrawal rate, you need $1.17 million. You need 3 times the capital to live in Denver compared to Malaga. 3 times. For a comparable or worse quality of life. Worse weather, worse food culture, more car dependence, more stress, more isolation. The financial services industry builds their retirement calculators around the Denver scenario and calls it universal. They're calculating for the most expensive possible lifestyle and telling you that's the baseline everyone needs. It's backwards. Geographic arbitrage should be the baseline calculation. Expensive domestic retirement should be the special case requiring justification. You might be wondering, if this math is so obvious, why isn't everyone doing this? Why aren't financial advisors showing their clients these calculations? The answer is straightforward. Incentives. A financial advisor managing your retirement portfolio typically charges 1% annually. 1% of $400,000 is $4,000 per year in fees. 1% of $1.7 million is $17,000 per year. If you retire at 45 with $400,000 and live on geographic arbitrage for the next 30 years, that advisor collects $120,000 in lifetime fees. If you work until 65 and accumulate $1.7 million, then let them manage it for 25 years, they collect $425,000 in lifetime fees. $300,000 more dollars in their pocket. That's the incentive structure. They're not lying to you exactly, they're just optimizing their advice for their revenue rather than your freedom. The same dynamic applies across the industry. Mortgage brokers need you buying expensive houses. Car companies need you financing new vehicles. The entire consumer economy depends on you working full-time to fund consumption you don't actually need. If a meaningful percentage of the population figured out that 400,000 and geographic flexibility equals lifetime freedom, the economic implications would be massive. Fewer people working full-time means less consumption, less debt, less fee extraction. The system needs you on the treadmill. The retirement timeline that keeps you working until your mid-60s isn't based on mathematical necessity, it's based on economic design. Let's talk about how you actually get to 400,000, because the timeline matters. Assume you're 30 years old earning $75,000 annually, and you commit to saving 25% of your gross income. That's $18,750 per year. Invest that in low-cost index funds averaging 7% annual returns after inflation. After 12 years, when you're 42, you have $410,000. 12 years of aggressive saving gets you to lifetime optional employment at 42. Maybe you can't save 25%. Maybe you can save 15%, $11,250 annually. At 7% returns, you hit $400,000 in 16 years. You're 46 instead of 42. Still 2 decades before the conventional retirement age. The timeline scales with savings rate. Save 30%, you're done in 10 years. Save 20%, you're done in 14 years. Even at 15%, which is aggressive but achievable for someone earning $75,000 who lives intentionally, you're financially independent before 50. Compare that to the conventional path. Save 10% for 35 years, accumulate 1.5 million by age 65, then retire domestically. You traded 15 extra years of mandatory employment for what? The comfort of staying in America? Proximity to family you see 4 times a year? Cultural familiarity? Maybe that's worth it, maybe it's not. But it should be a conscious choice based on honest calculation, not an assumption based on conventional wisdom you never questioned. The standard objections to geographic arbitrage are always the same. Let me address them with actual numbers. Objection 1. Healthcare costs and quality. American healthcare is extremely expensive without employer coverage. A couple in their 50s pays $800 to $1,200 monthly for insurance with high deductibles. Then you still pay out of pocket until you hit that deductible. In Spain, comprehensive private health insurance for a 50-year-old runs $120 monthly. In Thailand, it's $90. In Mexico, it's $100. Portugal, $110. These aren't budget emergency-only plans. These are comprehensive coverage. Doctor visits, specialists, prescriptions, surgery, hospital stays, and the care quality. Spain ranks 8th in the world for healthcare outcomes. France ranks 1st. Italy ranks 2nd. All have systems accessible to foreign residents at these prices. A knee replacement costs $45,000 in the United States. The same procedure with the same outcomes cost $7,000 in Spain, $5,000 in Thailand, $8,000 in Costa Rica. The healthcare argument against geographic arbitrage is based on American exceptionalism that doesn't match the data. For routine care, most developed countries deliver equal or better outcomes at a fraction of American prices. Objection 2. What about family? Legitimate concern. If you have aging parents requiring hands-on care or young grandchildren you want to see weekly, geographic arbitrage might not work. But be honest about the constraint. Most people overestimate how tied they are. Adult children don't need you living nearby. They need you to be happy and available for regular video calls and annual visits. Close friends drift apart over time regardless of geography. The friends you had at 30 aren't the same friends you have at 50. And here's the part nobody talks about. The geographic arbitrage community is full of people who worried about isolation and discovered they built stronger social networks abroad than they had at home. Shared experience of choosing an unconventional path creates powerful bonds. I'm not dismissing the cost of distance. I'm saying calculate it honestly. For some people, it's prohibitive. For others, it's a trade-off worth making for decades of freedom. Objection 3. Currency fluctuation and economic instability. Valid technical concern. If you're living in dollars but spending in euros, currency movement affects your purchasing power. 2 responses. First, diversify your invested capital across international holdings. Don't hold everything in dollar-denominated assets. Spread across American stocks, European stocks, Asian stocks, and bonds in multiple currencies. Currency fluctuation affects your spending, but it also affects your holdings. Proper diversification hedges this risk. Second, lifestyle flexibility. If the dollar weakens against the euro by 15%, you adjust. You move from Malaga to Seville, where costs are lower. You cook more meals at home. You travel less. The buffer between $14,000 annual spending and survival is enormous in low-cost countries. Modest adjustments maintain quality of life, even with currency headwinds. Here's what nobody tells you about early retirement through geographic arbitrage. The money is the easy part. The psychology is harder. Most people derive identity from their profession. They structure their time around employment. They get social connection through work. They feel purposeful because they're productive in an economically recognized way. Remove the job, and suddenly you need to answer deeper questions. Who are you when you're not your job title? How do you structure your time when nothing is mandatory? What makes you feel purposeful when nobody's paying you? Some people find these questions terrifying. They try geographic arbitrage retirement, discover they're bored and aimless, and return to employment within a year. Other people find these questions liberating. They've spent decades wanting more time for hobbies, relationships, learning, and creative projects. They have more interests than time to pursue them. You need to know which type you are before you pursue this path. Here's how to know. Pay attention to your weekends and vacations. If you're anxious and bored without work structure, you might need employment for psychological reasons beyond money. If you're energized and engaged during free time and frustrated when you have to return to work, you'll thrive in early retirement. This isn't about age or discipline, it's about psychological design. Some people are built for external structure, others are built for autonomy. Neither is better, but you need to know which you are. Let me paint you a picture of what life actually looks like. You wake up naturally around 7:30, no alarm. The first 90 minutes of your morning belong to you. Coffee on your balcony, reading, writing in your journal, a run through your neighborhood. Around 9, you might spend 2 hours working on a freelance project, not because you have to, because it's interesting and generates income that gives you buffer, but it's optional. If you'd rather spend the morning exploring a new neighborhood or having a long conversation with a friend, you do that instead. Lunch is at home, fresh ingredients from the market, prepared slowly because you have time. Afternoon is for whatever matters: language practice, a hobby project, exercise, meeting friends for coffee. Evening is dinner with your partner or friends at a local restaurant where a great meal costs $15, then a walk through your city, or reading, or working on a creative project. The structure is whatever you create. The stress is whatever you allow. The meaning is whatever you build. For people who've spent decades trading 40 to 60 hours weekly for a paycheck, having unlimited time is the greatest luxury imaginable. Not everyone wants this, but for those who do, 400,000 makes it possible decades before conventional retirement age. Here's the choice in stark terms. Path 1. Follow conventional retirement advice. Save 10% of your income for 35 years. Accumulate $1.7 million. Retire at 65. Live domestically on $60,000 annually. Work mandatory employment until Medicare age. Path 2. Save 25% of your income for 12 to 15 years. Accumulate $400,000. Move to a lower-cost location with better weather and culture. Generate $14,000 annually from capital, plus modest optional income. Make employment optional at 42 to 45. The difference is 20 years of freedom. 20 years of waking up and deciding how to spend your time based on what matters rather than what pays. 20 years of pursuing interests instead of obligations. 20 years of living in places you choose because you like them, not because employment chains you there. The financial services industry has convinced most people that Path 1 is the only realistic option, that Path 2 is fantasy or extreme sacrifice. I'm telling you, the mathematics prove otherwise. 400,000 deployed correctly, with flexibility on location and willingness to generate modest optional income, makes employment optional for life. Not theory, reality. Thousands of people are living this way right now. They're not suffering, they're thriving. They're proof that the conventional retirement timeline is optional, that you don't need millions, that freedom is available much sooner than you've been told. The only question is whether you're willing to challenge assumptions, optimize spending, embrace flexibility, and make unconventional choices. Calculate what your life actually costs. Test locations through month-long stays. Develop skills that generate location-independent income. Build capital aggressively during your accumulation phase. 400,000 and geographic arbitrage in 2026 gives you a concrete target, and a realistic timeline. The retirement planning industry will tell you this is impossible. Their business model depends on you believing that. The mathematics tell you something different. Freedom is closer than you think. The only question is whether you want it badly enough to pursue it.